Uh, Hi. It's been about 4 months. So, what happened? Well, what happened is basically time got away from me. I started writing an amazingly large amount of scripts, and I finished absolutely zero of them. Also, I was just generally very stressed out, and yeah. That is an incredible recipe for a sudden and not really intended hiatus. But now that we've got that out of the way, I can finish one of these scripts and then just make a video on something completely different anyway that I didn't script at all. Don't worry, there's a good reason for it, I swear. This is the streamer Plastic Allen. He's been my friend for over 5 years now, and while that may make me sound biased about this next part, I assure you this is a matter of absolute objectivity. He is also one of the best to ever do it. He played a fascinating game recently. I started to write about it and then I stopped because I realized that I would so much rather make an actual video about this than just write something to put on Backlogged. That said, full disclosure, I only played a few minutes of this game because it controls like absolute trash. Making matters worse, I saw how many issues Alan had with the game even on the new emulator Emir, and that kind of turned me away from it. For those of you who are suggesting that I instead play it on hardware, I do not own a Sega Saturn and I do not own a copy of the game. So LOL and also LMAO. Unless you're willing to pony up the approximately $300 it would cost me to do that, shut the fuck up. Mr. Bones is absolutely one of those games that you see the cover of and maybe a few seconds of memey out of context footage, and sure, you laugh about that, but unless you're one of the very few kids who happen to randomly be bought this game and it formed a huge part of your personality as a consequence, that is all you know of the game. I mean, this game comes from the mind of Ed Annunziata. Of course, this is prime material to be that one game for some kid. You know, like local blue sky celebrity, the Ooze.
No corporate oversight. Man, isn't that the truth though? That's how art happens. You take the corporate out of video games, you get art again. Now, I'm not saying that shit didn't exist in the past, but... There's too many stakes nowadays. It's too money oriented.
Now, I need to get something out of the way first, and that is that over the years, I had quite a lot of smoke for Ed Annunziata. In the early 2020s, he got way into NFT and blockchain-based game design. Cryptocurrency and NFTs have some serious issues technologically, a big one being that quite a lot of them were based on wasteful proof-of-work systems. Admittedly, this description is a little bit out of date. NFTs aren't really a thing anymore, and when it comes to cryptocurrency, I don't really know what the state of what kind of cryptographic proof is used for a lot of it. A big part of this is because cryptocurrency has basically gone a little bit out of the mainstream, and I was never really super interested in it as a subject to begin with. It just ended up being one of those things that I learned about a little bit when NFTs were on the rise, and I immediately pegged NFTs to be a load of completely useless nonsense. But I did also kind of need an argument as to why. Okay, around this part, I had a section recorded where I said something about how, okay, at least Ed Annunziata doesn't seem to be into AI, but another person reported to me that no, actually he is, citing his Discord profile, which I didn't look at that, obviously. All I looked at was some of his Twitter account. Not all of it, because I no longer have a Twitter account, and goodness knows I'm not going to sign up for one. So, yeah, to keep it short, that sucks. That sucks a lot. However, his current stance cannot erase any of his older material and any of the messages that it contained, or even just any of its quality overall. But if any of those are available new somewhere, I just would suggest not buying them in that case. It's actually completely okay to like stuff by a guy who started to suck later on, it's just not always easy. Obviously, this is completely different from liking something by a guy who sucked at the time. If it turns out that Ed Annunziata was so opposed to human artwork, I guess, even back then, well, that would change things a little bit. As it stands, he just seems like a clueless technophile who doesn't understand the ramifications of all the technology that he's promoting. Like, imagine a guy who just happens to build the Torment Nexus because he just likes building literally anything. And that's the sort of vibe that I get. And I really hope I'm right because I don't like the alternative. If all you do is look at this cover art, you might think that this is yet another instance of the corporations trying way too hard to try to make someone cool for the 90s. It's a guitar-playing skeleton. Do I really need to say anything else? Well, I think that strains a little bit as you start to watch how the gameplay unfolds, and beyond that, the story. Now, I freely admit that I'm not the sort of person who pays a lot of attention to the stories in platformer games. Usually they're just sort of window dressing that exists primarily because every game needs to have some sort of a story. If you, for example, try to read too much into the politics of Ratchet & Clank as a franchise, it will start to fall apart. This is probably because the writers weren't really that interested in sending a message. They just wanted to have a few jokes. You will see why I'm making an exception, but we have to get there first, and in order to do that, we have to play a few levels of this game. Here is where you will immediately notice that Mr. Bones is pretty unique, if not necessarily always in a good way. Yes, we are talking about gameplay. That's not usually what this channel is about, but I swear I'm trying to paint a picture for you. Now, it's not just the fact that Mr. Bones has the unique ability to disassemble and reassemble himself, sometimes even falling apart just from taking too much damage. It's also the fact that the genre of this game hops around quite a bit. In addition to the regular platforming, there's also a rhythm minigame and a top-down shooter at various points, and there are quite a lot of auto-scrolling sections of various kinds. In fact, even the platforming tends to mix it up a little bit with the presentation. There's a level from a top-down perspective and, get this, a level from a bottom-up perspective. I'm pretty sure this is the only time I've ever seen it in a video game. Being totally honest with you, I expected to see this in some gacha game franchise too, but maybe that would be considered a little bit too over the line. As is the trademark for practically everything that Ed Annunziata worked on in the 90s, the game is monstrously hard, a little bit awkward to control, and full of some very psychedelic visuals. It also has a pretty cool soundtrack composed by Ronnie Montrose, which, wow, that's not a name that I had thought of in over 10 years prior to doing any work on this video. In the early to mid-70s, Ronnie Montrose was the leader and guitar player of the band Montrose, which is perhaps best known nowadays for being the band where Sammy Hagar got his start. However, Ronnie was also a very accomplished session musician who played on quite a lot of other recordings. I think maybe one of the most famous would have to be the Edgar Winter Group's album, They Only Come Out at Night. For those who are not aficionados of the group, that album has the songs Free Ride and Frankenstein on it. If you've spent a lot of time listening to classic rock radio, you've probably heard both of those. However, Ronnie also had a pretty sizable solo career in the 80s and going all the way into the 90s and beyond. And for some reason, I'm not exactly sure how this happened, he ended up providing the soundtrack to Mr. Bones. Now, supposedly, and I don't have a real source for this, so I apologize, but supposedly, originally, they wanted to get David Gilmour to do the soundtrack for this. On paper, that sounds a lot more up Ed Annunziata's street, but the results here are perfectly fine. Also, Ronnie shows up in a cutscene as a blind blues musician. This will be important later. On its face, Mr. Bones is a pretty simple story. See, you've got this evil necromancer and he raises an army of skeletons to go do whatever evil necromancers do, but you are in control of the one good skeleton. Over time, you convince some of the other skeletons to give up their ways, and also you go and defeat the evil guy. You know, it's a platformer, there's not really a whole lot of attention made to making the story itself be good. And of course, I'm about to over-explain some things to you that sound pretty facile. For example, the evil skeletons all have red eyes, meanwhile yours has blue. This sort of pairing of red and blue as opposites, and in particular putting red as something evil, those are not exactly unusual. This also fits into the plot element where the necromancer's power is described as skeletism, which is a contraction of skeleton and magnetism. It is not uncommon to depict a dipole magnet with a north pole as red and a south pole as blue, or if not blue, then one of the other cool colors, or just something that stands in opposition to red. There's also one other thing about this color theming that is almost as obvious, if not more so, which I'm going to start talking about right now. And in order to do that, we have to actually talk about the main thing that inspired this video, and what is probably the video's title. As of this recording, I haven't decided yet, but unsurprisingly, you will get to see what the video's title is once it's on YouTube. So, you can tell me if the video title is actually what I'm about to pretend it is. Glass Shards is a 2D platforming level that you encounter midway through the game, whose primary gimmick is that it basically hasn't got one. You have these spinning platforms that you can use to get a boost, but that's about it, and calling that a gimmick feels like a bit of a stretch. Considering that this game is very much oriented around levels that have gimmicks, it's a bit of an outlier. It is, fundamentally, the most mundane level in the entire game. Even in terms of visuals, this is nothing special, especially by the standards of Ed Annunziata. This does not even begin to approach the psychedelia of a lot of the rest of the game, never mind the rest of Ed's oeuvre, unless you're the sort of person who believes that anything that has color in it whatsoever is psychedelic. Now, if there's one thing you need to know about me, it's that I cannot stand objects that have color in them. If it's not white, black, a shade of gray, or brown, I do not care. For example, this damnable thing. Get the fuck out of here! Only one thing really stands out about this level, and that's the background music. Or rather, the background spoken word section.
The first thing somebody to realize that wants to know what the blues is the first thing they gotta realize is that everybody has it.
Wow, did someone in the studio forget to turn off their philosophy audiobooks? Hey, interrupting from the future here to point out that I have since learned that our blues philosopher here is Paul Pina. I suspect that's not really a name that a lot of people could place off the top of their heads, so Paul Pina is an American blues musician. Nowadays, he is probably the most famous because he wrote the song Jet Airliner by the Steve Miller Band, which was quite a hit and still sees a lot of play on classic rock radio. However, Paul Pina was a very talented blues musician in his own right. He also, just like the blues man character that we see in the game, was blind. He, like several musicians, discovered Tuvan throat singing in the 1980s and became very interested in it. 1999 saw the release of a documentary called Genghis Blues, exploring Paul Pina's interest in the subject, his teaching himself how to throat sing, and eventual journey to Tuva to perform after impressing Tuvan throat singers at a performance at the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco in 1993. And just for completeness, here's a little clip of some Tuvan throat singing for you so you can hear what it sounds like. From what I've gleaned from the comments, the singer's name is Saldash Mangush. I apologize for my pronunciations. I'm sorry. Hey, late-breaking edit here. I made a mistake and I misread the I in the name as an L. That would be Saidash Mangush, I believe. Again, no expert in the language. Yeah, you can just see how it's spelled up there. Yeah, I think I understand why there were so many people in the 1980s who were so interested in this, because, no kidding, this is, far and away, the coolest sound that I have ever heard a human being make with just their body. Quite frankly, I could talk about cool stuff like this all day, which is why I usually script these videos. Let's get back to the main topic at hand. Perhaps the relative mundanity of the graphics and gameplay here helped to throw this piece of background music into sharp relief, because this level is where what the game is all about, the crux of the biscuit if you will, finally comes to the fore. And yes, I do maintain that this game, which is basically just an exploration of the things that this developer finds cool, is about something. It is, in fact, this piece of background voice that lends coherence to the whole project. Well, whole project might be a bit of a stretch, but certainly this part of the project. However, in order to dig into this in full, we are going to have to review the tape a little bit. As mentioned previously, there's another, very literal, reason why Mr. Bones is affiliated with the color blue. It's not just because he's a good guy and it puts him in opposition to the red enemies, but also because he literally has an affiliation with the blues. After all, even well ahead of when this magical blind blues musician teaches him about the blues, he expresses that he has the blues. Now, at first, yes, this is just a bad joke playing off of his eye color, which is his defining characteristic relative to the other skeletons, and which he is cognizant of. Is that weird? Probably not. But both meanings end up working here because this is an effective use of such a bad joke. While Ronnie is teaching him about the blues, he imparts one very important piece of advice. Don't think, play. This advice leads you into the level Guitar Solo, a rhythm game section in the middle of this platformer, which, yeah, okay. But this is also the part of the game where we get to see the big idea in action. You just wouldn't really realize it until later, probably. The guitar solo level makes this don't think play advice a gameplay element too. It doesn't matter what notes you play, so long as you play them in the correct rhythm. As you do this, the eyes of the skeletons in the background begin to turn blue, signifying not only that they've turned against their master Dagulian, I don't know if I've said his name yet, but also that they, presumably, much like our hero, have become aware. And this is what sets Mr. Bones apart from the other skeletons. Not just the fact that he's a good guy, not even his emotions. More, the fact that he's aware of them.
You know, it's not a matter of not having the blues or not knowing, it's a matter of not recognizing, what it is.
By not thinking and just playing, this allows the music that Mr. Bones creates to flow from the heart. It's an expression of raw emotion. And, to finally loop back around to Glass Shards, that's what at least part of the monologue in that level is about. One critical aspect of the monologue is describing the fact that playing the blues can be a way to express yourself when you feel that you are otherwise unable. What Mr. Pina describes is men dealing with toxic masculinity, even though he does not use that phrase, but this is more of a universal constant that can apply to anybody who has any sort of difficulty with communication. The arts are a potent outlet for one's emotions, and why would music be any different?
Sometimes a man's got to cry, but he's been brung up to think, man, he's supposed to cry, he ain't a man or something, so he takes his guitar and he just kind of... While he's got this thing that will make a noise and be give him company and all, he can say things that sometimes it's a little hard to get out in words. And he's real lonely. He can take that guitar and maybe he can't make it say words, but he can make it say a whole lot of different things.
The music that Boney M plays is a direct line from his feelings down to his compatriots. It's not just about the fact that expressing yourself is powerful, although that is true. This is about the power of commiseration to bring people together. This isn't just a story about how cool the blues is. This is a story about how pain is what makes us human, and more importantly, the ability for us to resonate with each other's pain is what makes us human and helps us come together. I mean, obviously it's not the only thing, but this type of empathy is nevertheless incredibly powerful. And furthermore, expressing one's pain is a healing act, no matter what form that expression of pain takes. It's good to resonate with someone else's pain because it's an act of catharsis. It may not necessarily feel great at the time, after all, that's what catharsis is anyway. But when you get out the other side, you will feel refreshed. Wow, I really am just reading from the fucking dictionary at you now, aren't I? Yes, on some level, this is all incredibly facile analysis. I do accept that, and I don't even disagree with you. Perhaps I'm just impressed to see something like this from a simplistic platformer of this era, because it's quite rare. Perhaps it's just the fact that even though Mr. Bones is objectively a very quirky and somewhat artsy game, I don't want it to be damned to the same kind of reception that that type of game usually gets. Because that kind of reception is not positive. It ought to come as no surprise that even among the game's rather middling reception, these spoken word sections were especially polarizing. Here, let me pull up this review from GamePro. Now, look, I don't really consider GamePro reviews to ever really be a high watermark in the history of game criticism, but holy crap, there's something about this particular thing that really gets my goat. To quote this absolute brain trust calling himself Scary Larry in this review, quote, "Pro tip, in Glass Shards, use the spinning platforms to ascend to higher levels. Try not to pay attention to the running commentary, which contains the line, 'Even Jesus Christ had the blues big time.'" I do kind of wonder why that particular line seems to stick in Lawrence's craw here, but he goes on to say, "Bluesy music and wicked guitar riffs are offset, however, by mildly annoying running commentary about the blues, especially in the Glass Shards stage." And in giving the sound a 4.5 on their 5-point scale, great music and weird sound effects make the game interesting. Stupid commentary and ridiculous voiceovers often kill the mood, though. Yeah, I think there might be something to be said here about people consuming art and denying its meaning. On the other hand, that does seem like something a little deep to broach about a review in a 90s gaming magazine by someone referring to themselves as scary as though that's something positive. Now, granted, this, if I may be so generous, critic also says of the game, the final product is a hodgepodge of beautifully rendered graphics, kick-ass sound, and insipid hop-and-bop gameplay. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say that this gameplay is particularly good, and nor am I going to say that the gameplay is innovative. This is all well-worn territory, but the way this is written seems to suggest that the gameplay is all a single genre throughout when, as I've mentioned, it does vary things up quite a bit. Hang on a sec, I think I need to go outside and touch grass. I'm getting this heated about a 30-year-old GamePro review. Wow, it's really, really cold out there, by the way. Makes sense, it's winter. Actually, hold up. I probably should talk about this line a little bit because I think that it's quite important to the whole monologue. I couldn't think of the word monologue at first. Wow.
Jesus Christ had the blues. Big time.
In this case, I don't think Pina invokes the big JC because of any inherent religiousness to his message. Now, yes, he does discuss the Bible a little bit, and if I were a betting fellow, I would put money on his religious beliefs leaning in a direction with a bit more of a Christian persuasion, which would be ironic if it weren't for the King James version of the Bible. But I think it's more that some people perceive Jesus as sort of superhuman in some way. A recurring motif throughout the monologue is that everyone gets the blues. In order to bring everyone down to earth and put them on equal footing, Pina repeatedly invokes the most unlikely of candidates. Anyone can have the blues, and he means that in the most absolute way possible.
Shoot, little baby, as soon as he comes out of mama and has the blues, it's just like we think that, just because somebody's got $10 million, they're happy.
This isn't just about getting sad once in a while. This is about a deep-seated sorrow, and it's something that we all get. It doesn't matter who we are, it's human nature. It's not necessarily what defines us, but it is something that all of us can feel. And that is why it resonates so powerfully with everyone. And while the music of the blues is suggested as a primary vehicle for doing this, it's not about that specifically. It's just about letting your feelings out. Don't keep it bottled up. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Just be honest with yourself and let it out.
It can be like that sometimes. Even if no other human being is listening to you, if you can open up that pressure valve, and get all that garbage out, sometimes it makes a man feel better. Okay, friend, come on in and I'll play you some music and we'll talk about it.
Now, to reiterate, I didn't script any part of this video. I simply saw a friend playing this game, and I was just so struck by the game's content that I felt like I needed to talk about it. I know that artsy kind of stuff like this has always existed, and games with deeper meaning always have too. In fact, quite a lot of older platformers probably do have something that I would be able to find if I were to actually analyze them a little bit. I just haven't really bothered in most cases. And nevertheless, that would not diminish the beauty of this barely playable mess of a game. But quite frankly, who cares if this game is a bit of a mess to play? With this game, someone had a deep conviction that it needed to be made and a story that they wanted to tell about the power of sorrow. This is a game that could only have come from the heart. This is a very human piece of art. And the fact that Ed Annunziata is throwing himself into AI stuff is why he is one of the most infuriating game designers ever! One of these days I need to make a full list of that, don't I? I'll deal with it later.
What can you do on the moon?
Hey, I'm pretty sure I recorded the entire video's mic, way too hot. I apologize. In my defense, I haven't really recorded anything in a couple of months. I really did mean to get back to things sooner, but instead I just got caught up in writing so many scripts, and yeah, I think you already understand that. So once again, sorry for the massive layoff here. I hope at least this was a pretty interesting subject. This is not the sort of thing that I would usually talk about in one of these videos. So as usual, leave a like if you like the video, comment if you have something to say, subscribe if you're not subscribed, click the bell. patreon.com/lunariandelia. That's where you can go if you want to help support me. Shoutouts to my patrons, Plastic Allen, Mile Marker, and my newest patron, Dust Star. Thank you very much for your support and your overall kindness. If you would like to watch me stream video games, I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/lunariandelia. It starts at 7 p.m. Central Time, which right now is Central Standard, but will be Central Daylight Time a little later in the year. I've got a bit of a different schedule planned out for most of this year, where on Monday I'm playing a game that I've never played before. Tuesday, for some reason this didn't all stay recorded. That's great. So Tuesday and Wednesday is the main game. Thursday is a randomizer, and I changed what randomizer I'm doing monthly. This month it's Metroid Prime randomizer. Friday, I play mostly card game oriented stuff. Right now, it's a Magic the Gathering mod for the Chandelar game from 1997. That's all. Thank you all very much. Until next entry, good night, everybody. See you in the future. I'm a little bit flummoxed about this recording issue.